Live streaming is on.
Okay, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart, and my partner in crime.
This is Tommy Duncan. Welcome, everyone.
Okay, and today, Tom, well, not today, the other day, I was at, I think it was called a little restaurant called Cotton Patch. You familiar with it?
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times.
Okay, and I met an interesting lady, and she's a black lady, and I think she's from the Caribbean, but she
So
told
she's
me
not African American.
she's pretty much an American. She's been here since age 5, and she's
Okay,
probably
she was raised in
45
America.
here. So
Okay,
she's pretty much been Americanized. And she told me that her family, when she goes home, don't recognize her. And I think that probably means her ways, culture, and behavior is probably non-Caribbean now, at least for a woman. But during the course of our discourse, she made the statement that black women have low self-esteem in America because of the black man.
okay.
And
So Jimmy, first, how did y'all get to that conclusion? What were y'all talking about before she made that
I
statement?
can't remember how we segued into that. That is a good question. I wish I had a good answer, but I don't. Somehow we
Okay,
were sort of talking, um, and I think I was. She was telling me how her family, when she goes home, complains that she's too Americanized, and she doesn't quite know what that means. And I think I started telling her that there are probably certain behaviors that women have developed in the Caribbean that are probably a little more what you would probably say either subservient or more in line with traditional women behaviors that American women have long since moved away from, migrated from. So, in the course of you living here, you probably have discorded and probably never really learned some of those ways and behaviors. And so now when you go back, your family members and the women there see that you're quite different than traditional Caribbean women. So there's a distinct difference between the American women and Caribbean women, and of course they've noticed it. So and somehow that segued into the whole issue of self-esteem um, and then her accusation that black women have low self-esteem because of the black man.
well, I guess the first question that I would bring up is the fact that black women have low self-esteem, and so first she's asserting that black women have low self-esteem. That's the first thing. And do they is the question. And then the second thing is that black men are responsible for black women having low self-esteem. So first, do black women have low self-esteem? And then second, if they do, in fact, is it because of black men in America?
Oh, I definitely believe they do. Um, I don't know how they couldn't. In fact, I think probably black men don't suffer as much because we don't pay attention to fashion things, and um, we're not big subscribers of GQ and what's the other men's magazine, Maxim, and so fashion probably is not our strong suit. Whereas women probably pay closer attention to the fashion rags, to the opinion rags, and and the big screen and small screen, what's going on, the commercials. Where we probably don't follow as closely as they do. So I think,
So
and if that's with that being the case, those images that are put out by the fashion industry, by advertisers, and the images you see on sitcoms on television, then on the big screen in the movies, a lot of those are not favorable for black women.
so when you say that black women, if you are asserting that black women definitely do have low self-esteem, what would be the symptoms or the visual effects of black women having low self-esteem, if in fact they do?
I think some of the desire to sort of adopt the look of other cultures, especially white women who probably dominate the fashion industry, the straightening of hair, the extensions, the wigs. So I think all those things sort of factor in to how the black woman sort of views herself, even the clothes and the fashion. So I think over time that all plays in, and then when you start having a desire to look like others or to mimic some of their look and adopt it to make it your own, I think that either says that you either been extremely flattering of other cultures, or there are things about your own culture that you don't particularly care.
Okay, well, I mean, some of that I could probably concur with. I mean, when you consider hair, I mean, black women's hair is naturally curly or kinky, or what some consider to be a coarser grade of hair than Caucasian women. But I mean, if you look at the thousands of years of history of human existence, of which the black woman is the mother of all civilization, that there was for lack of a better term, a divergence in terms of skin tone, hair texture, nose and lips based upon the geography of where humans were living at a certain point in time. And so there's a reason that if you're living in a hotter climate for tens of thousands of years, that you're naturally going to have certain features that are going to allow you to survive. And if you're living in colder climates, then you're going to have to adapt over tens of thousands of years that are going to naturally force you to adapt in order to survive. But I guess what I'm hearing is that black women have not been socialized to appreciate and to embrace those things that are native to them, which means coarse hair, curly hair, broader nose, thick lips, broader nose, thick hips. Now, what I find quite interesting is that if you're saying that those things that are natural to black women aren't being glamorized, why is it that you find other women that are trying to be like black women? Otherwise, why would you have women, Caucasian women in some cases, injecting things into the lips to make their lips bigger? Or, I mean, black women naturally have, in a lot of cases, bigger thighs and bigger butts. But in a lot of cases, you have Caucasian women who get surgery or implants in order to have bigger, thicker thighs, or who work extremely hard to have things that are natural and native to black women.
Well, I think the combination of both cultures, there are things we can both draw on, and so I think for women, um, having fuller lips versus those cut off monkey lips is probably more attractive overall. Um, and I think for the hips, the shape of the buttocks, I mean, there are just certain things that naturally look more attractive on a woman, regardless of race or what color she is. So if you have it, like for instance, the shape of the hips sort of have become historically attracted to men because it's how you can really judge whether a woman is really a good candidate to carry children. And so, that gives you an opportunity to replicate your genetic material into the future if you can pair with a woman who can have offspring. Firm breasts, that are capable of feeding children. These are things that we may not articulate or understand why we're attracted to them, but we are attracted to them generally at a basic instinct level because these are things that generally indicate that this woman is a good candidate for childbearing. So hips, breasts, butt, certain physique, um, generally tend to be more attractive than the straight up and down beanpole or the very obese woman who's overweight and looks unhealthy.
Let me ask you this, Jimmy. I mean, because I know that you come across, women of different ethnicities, black, white, Hispanic, otherwise, and obviously in my work, I do the same thing. Do you think that low self-esteem is something specific to black women? Or is this just something symptomatic of being a woman in terms of having low self-esteem? Otherwise, is it that black women have low self-esteem and, for instance, Caucasian women have high self-esteem?
I think that, Tom, I think it's part of this is like a small part of a larger puzzle. And this piece of it feeds into the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that we have a dominant white culture here that wants to stay dominant and relevant. Um, when you start being overly concerned about the fact that white people are not having enough children, for instance, that feeds into some of the fear that they're not going to be the dominant culture one day, or that we're going to become a minority majority country in the next two generations. Um, the fact that these things even become relevant and become part of the dialogue today is because those who are dominant want to stay dominant, and they fear that they may get relegated or pushed aside. So I think the imagery of how we portray beauty and define beauty, even if you have to borrow a little bit. I think we did a show last year that talked about how Hollywood was now using white women and with tans to play the role of a light skinned black woman rather than going out and getting a light skinned black woman. I think they look at it that they could just borrow a little bit here and there, tan the skin up, puff the lips up a little bit, put a butt pad behind there if you have to, if you don't have a round butt. Not necessarily a big butt, but just a round curve, the curvature, that that becomes sort of the new standard for beauty for those who can reach it. Now, for us, a lot of our women, can reach the standard and do reach it, and then we tend to glorify them, like let's say like a mixed race Halle Berry or Angela. I mean, what's Prince Harry's wife, Merkel? I mean, what's her name? Um,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
so generally, a lot of mixed race children can kind of meet that super criterion, but white women tend to be able to get there either through surgery, through tanning salons and lotions. Um, they can get there quicker than the average black woman. So I think so it's always in their interest to continue to find beauty around them and what they can achieve versus trying to find beauty around what we can achieve.
Well, I think you bring up a couple of good points. There's a fear of being overtaken as a predominant culture in America. And maybe there's some validity there. I mean, I understand that by the middle of this century, yeah, they will not, if trends continue, will not be the majority culture, because obviously you have a growing Hispanic culture. You have the African American community, which is pretty much staying stagnant through several different vectors. Whether that's through death, health, and other factors that are contributing to us pretty much stagnating in terms of our overall proportion of the culture. But you have a growing Latin culture or Hispanic culture here, and then the white community is somewhat staying flat and or tapering off compared to other cultures. So I guess my thought is this: predominant in terms of numbers is one thing, but power is a completely different thing. And I think what's most relevant here is who's in power. And I don't think there's any question as to who is in power, and the gap in terms of who's in power compared to other communities that have power in the U.S.
Well, Tom, it's not just limited to the U.S. When you look at the Hispanic or the Latin community, they go through the same thing, the silly ignorance that black folks are going through with the light skin, dark skin issue. When you go down to Central and South America, it's the same thing. I remember a few years ago when a dark skinned a Brazilian woman won whatever super pageant contest they have around salsa and dancing, sort of a beauty contest and dancing. And what a controversy it was because she was a dark skinned Brazilian woman. Um,
So
and
what
at
was
that
the
time,
controversy about?
that she was dark skinned, that all
What's
the
so
other women,
controversial about that?
because the Brazilian people will prefer a light-skinned Brazilian woman to represent them. And in fact,
So so if they
the
have
article, but the article
it,
talked about um, how grandparents and older people would put pressure on the young girls to make sure they got pregnated by a white guy, so that would guarantee that their child would be mixed or lighter. And if they were to pair with a dark-skinned Brazilian, that would be problematic. So it's not just here in America. I mean, it's up and down the Americas, North America, South America, Central America. I'm not sure about Canada, but I do know even in Mexico, you hear about the dark-skinned black people there who catch hell. They catch worse hell than we do here in America just for being black, and in Mexico, that the lighter-skinned Mexicans, especially the ones who can pass for white, are the top of the pecking order.
okay. Well, to me, that sounds more like a sense of insecurity more so than anything else. I mean, if you're so concerned that someone who's darker than you won a pageant or is in a position of power, that seems like more insecurity to me
But
than
doesn't
anything.
security sort of feeds your self-esteem?
Absolutely. I mean, let's be quite frank. I mean, when even if we look at, you know, and regardless of the politics, when President Obama, a very fair-skinned light man, became president, there were some folks who thought it was the end of the world because you had a man who was considered to be black, even though he was very fair-skinned compared to most black people, became president of the United States. They thought it was the end of the world.
Yeah, if he
You have
was my color,
someone
he
who's,
would have made it.
excuse me,
If he was my color, he would not have made it.
you're right. You're right. And the fact that he was a light-skinned black man probably contributed greatly. It had nothing to do with his intelligence or his capabilities, but you're probably right. If you or I would
It
have been
probably
Barack
made it more
Obama, we probably
palatable.
would never have been president.
I mean, it probably made it more palatable for the white people who helped get him over the hump and get him elected to accept him.
You're
Um,
right, because they
so
would not have
my
been accepting of
question
the
is,
darker
in the
skin.
world, mainstream white America is going to embrace someone as dark as me to be president.
I would agree. I would
Governor,
completely
maybe.
agree.
President, no.
Yeah, Jimmy. So I mean, you're probably just as, in my opinion, if not more intelligent than our current president, but they wouldn't have accepted you if you, Jimmy, were Donald Trump, but you were just in your skin, you would not have been elected if you had the same characteristic, virtues,
No.
backgrounds, and pedigree,
No, it wouldn't happen.
just
Uh,
because you happen to be dark.
that's correct.
If you were a multi-billionaire real estate tycoon, same disposition, everything, there is no way that they would feel. Ultimately, it is a feeling of insecurity and inadequacy because at the end of the day, Jimmy, if you were Donald Trump, make America great again, there is a large segment of our population who would be very fearful of the exact same personality in your skin being the most powerful man in the world.
If you
Just
take a
because
look
you were
at
dark.
Dr. Carson, who did run, he's not as dark as I am. He's fairly, I'd say fairly brown skinned, but maybe a little leaning towards the dark side. But very intelligent man, obviously very accomplished.
Yes, he
Not a
is.
billionaire, but very, wealthy man. Despite and very, I mean, just a very wealthy person. But you notice that, I mean, after some short success in the beginning, his whole campaign fell apart over an unproven accusation from a white woman that he had gotten her pregnant or something or had an affair with her. Um, when he said he didn't know the woman, he took a picture with her, but he takes pictures with lots of people and a little
Right.
selfie, and that was her only evidence that they had been in an affair. Is that she had a picture with him at a fundraiser where he was taking pictures with lots of people.
If that's
You
if
know,
that's the case, Jimmy, then there's a lot of people who got a lot of baby mamas out there. If it's a matter of just taking a picture with somebody,
but so I think if it was a black woman making the claim, it would have been easily dismissed by the press and it would have moved on.
so let's get to the
But
core.
for
Let's get to the core of the theme here. And this sister that you had lunch with asserted that it was
woman,
the black man's. It was the
her
black
theory is
man's
that
fault.
rap videos destroyed the self image of the black woman. scantily dressed, butts hanging out, having to do all kind of untoward things in the videos of a sexual nature, and that basically what she called the whole atmosphere created for black women, and that they never recovered from it.
Okay. My question would be this: number one, who is responsible for those women getting in those videos? I mean, were they forced by gunpoint
No,
to
nobody's
film those
forced.
videos?
No one's forced. So I mean, it's quite voluntary, which is true. But I'm also reminded, Tom, that you still have some that's in that industry that have, I guess, have broken the seal and said things and made comments. Like DMX has made statements that if you try to write or produce anything positive with a positive message, that the music industry just rejects it. I can't think of the young lady's name. Wasn't Salt and Pepper. It was MC Light, I think is her name.
Right.
She said the same thing. That when you try to do something positive, have a positive message, that the music industry, the studios, producers just won't take your music.
Well, let
You know,
me ask you
they,
this, Jimmy. Does that apply across all genres and ethnicities, or is that just rap and or hip hop?
I'm not sure, but so we all know that sex sells. So
Of
you want to
course.
put a little sex appeal in everything you're doing because it does
Well, Jimmy,
sell.
I just, I don't listen to a lot of videos or look at a lot of
I don't
videos as
either.
much as I
So
used to. But I will tell you this: I just don't recall that many scantily clad women in country and western videos hopping up and down
no,
in
you
Daisy
don't.
Duke. I don't remember seeing that.
No, you don't. So I don't think you see it. I don't think you see very much of it in rock videos or
No,
easy
I
listen
don't.
videos.
I don't.
And so why it's so prevalent in the rap videos, I think some of it may even be by design. That maybe it's hard to sell a video with anything other than that in it if you're a rapper, especially a gangster rapper. That's
Well,
just a
Jimmy, there are a couple of groups that I remember, when we were just a little bit younger, who were pretty doggone popular. I don't recall Run DMC having a lot of women shaking their
no,
butts up
they
and down.
didn't.
I don't remember Public Enemy
Public
with
Enemy didn't
women
do it.
shaking their booties and getting
KR,
it down.
KRS-One,
And I think that they were pretty doggone popular
they
hip
were.
hop music who made a lot of money.
So yeah, the Grandmaster Flash and Boogie Down Production. I mean, those are folks who pioneered hip hop and but had positive messages in their song. I don't know if they make it today though. I mean,
I
in the
guess my
age of gangster rap,
mm,
if if a Run DMC, which I know, I think Run's still alive, but I know
yes, he is.
the DJ
Grandmaster
and
Jay. Yeah, he was killed.
if they were coming up today with that same style, same lyrics, same word, could they even make it today?
Jimmy, this is why I think they would. I think that we are in America at such a heightened and intense level of anxiety just because of where we are politically in our country that maybe we're not talking about the same epic in our
Mm-hmm.
history in our history in America, but I believe that a political message would definitely be very attractive. I mean, think about this, Jimmy. So we have a resurgence. Interestingly enough, there was a song by NWA called "F the
Okay,
Police," and there was a movie that was made just within the last couple of years that
right.
reintroduced the politics of law enforcement and the black community. And I think they made some pretty good money on that movie. If
Well,
I
I think they
recall.
did because I think people who were fans of NWA when they were coming up probably went to see it. A lot of young kids went to see it because it had a defiant message against the man and the system. So those
Absolutely.
movies do well with a certain portion of our society. Um, but I'm not sure if MWA is a sort of a role model for young kids coming up.
I
Um,
wouldn't say it's a role model, Jimmy, but the question that you had just brought up is if someone with that type of message would be popular today. And during that period of time, you got to remember, that was in the late 80s,
Mm-hmm.
early 90s. And there was a lot of political intrigue going on at that point in time. And I would say what we're going through right now puts that, it probably makes it look like
Child's play.
Tonka
Yeah.
toys, based upon what we have. Because, back then you're talking about Reagan and Bush. Well, Trump at this point in time has completely taken it to a double or triple scale in terms of political intrigue in our country and the media hype around that. So again, you have someone with a message. You have someone that immediately appeals to a younger audience. And that's exactly what NWA did. That's exactly what PRT, Poor Righteous Teachers, did at that point in time. That's exactly what Boogie Down Productions did, at that point in time.
That was a long time ago, Tom, but could they survive today?
You know what?
I think gangster rap music may have killed the whole positive rap movement of the 70s and 80s. Those are cats that pioneered the industry, and all of a sudden probably got forced out or kicked out. And now I don't know if if a Boogie Down Production would go walk into a studio and say, "Hey, I want to cut a record," and here it is. 40, 50 years ago, it may have been great. Today's culture, the days of how much bling I have, how many women I have, how many people I've put down and shot and after police. I'm not sure if any kind of positive message would survive today.
Well, I guess we'll have to kind of create, bifurcate what we talk about positive versus political. I believe that folks are always waiting for a message that speaks to their experience, in some cases speaking to their pain and or speaking to what they're going through at this point in time. So I believe that it would be just as effective. It would just have to obviously tap into where it is today.
But Tom, I think when you say where it is today, is missing because I don't think there are any fewer people who want to put out a positive message. So I think DMX and MC Lyte and a few others who made the comments about how the music industry only wants certain types of track. They only hear certain.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
And so we don't hear it today because the music industry is not going to produce it. They think.
Well, then now that I cannot disagree with you on. I don't disagree with you on that because at the end of the day, I believe that there's a reason why you only have certain types of messages, certain types of content that are getting out. And I think it's very strategic. I believe it's very insidious. And I believe that it's deliberate. So yeah,
I think it's definitely all part of a master plan that to keep people that you destroyed, there's just another facet of the destruction. That if you can, get the young kids, wanting to be gangsters more than want to be a scientist or a mathematician, there's a good chance that community is going to have some problems in the next generation, and you're going to have all kind of chaos. So I think it feeds into a larger narrative that there is a process of how to destroy people, and the music industry is just part of it. The image industry is part of it. I think, but it all ties into a bigger picture to basically wreak destruction on Black people and brown people. And eventually, this is now spilling over into poor white people, but even they won't be immune from it for long. So I think at some point, the elites of the country want to stay elite and stay relevant. Are going to continue to dominate how things are done in a way that they keep as much chaos going on and keep us fighting amongst each other to keep our eyes off the bigger prize, which is being successful in life. Because the more people, the fewer people you have being successful in life, less competition for you, for your kids, and it also ensures that you and yours continue to be the elite.
I would agree. And I guess that kind of addresses the initial question that your friend brought up, Black men being responsible for low self-esteem of Black women. And she pointed specifically to rap music. And the reality of it is the artists, the musicians who are responsible for the content aren't the folks who are controlling what's being produced and what's being put out there for millions of people to consume. It's the folks behind them that you don't see who truly have the power, who are responsible for what's being put out there for the general viewing audience via the radio stations, via television. And black men are very infinitesimally small in terms of determining what content is being put out there. And so at the end of the day, black men can't be responsible for low self-esteem in black women if she is pointing specifically to the images of black women on rap music, because they don't have the power to determine the content that's being put out on radio.
Rap music hasn't been around that long. I mean, you started seeing the transition like in the 80s, late 80s, maybe 90s, and maybe by the 2000s they were entrenched, but it hadn't been around for generations. So what's the excuse before gangster rap music?
Well, that's a good point. I think it's really media, and media is not controlled. The media that our community consumes is not controlled by our community. And so if we go back 2 or 3 generations, to when we were, in our late teens or early 20s, we didn't control media or what content was put out there. We had a few television shows come on. You had, folks like Sanford and Son. You had Good Time. You had the Jeffersons. But when you look at it, that's maybe 1%, possibly 2% of what you saw in terms of images of black people on television. Obviously, we didn't control that.
Well, we didn't control it, and a few things we did control, like an Ebony magazine or a Jet. I don't know. I mean, are they even still around? I think Ebony may still be published, but
yeah. If I recall, and I haven't looked at it recently, but I mean, they were looking at bankruptcy, God forbid, an institution in this country, and I haven't looked at it recently, but I know that they were looking at bankruptcy at some point in time here pretty recently.
Yeah, I heard. In fact, I heard they were selling off their photo library,
right,
to raise some capital. But here's the other thing, man. I mean, growing up, every week everybody enjoyed getting their copy of Jet and seeing the beauty of the week. So that kind of helped define, the whole, black image as far as beauty was concerned.
Correct.
But now when you take that out of circulation, I don't think young kids now even know what a Jet magazine is.
Well, you know what? You're right. But I think, unfortunately, for a lot of our kids, Jimmy, what they do have is they have a phone, they have a laptop, they have a pad, and a lot of the images of black women that you will find, and there are positive images of black women, but I believe they're overwhelmed from what I've seen, unfortunately, by women who are, scantily clad would be a very politically correct way of describing what I'm seeing of a lot of our young, beautiful black women on the screen. You got women who are basically putting their own sex shows, on the screen. You have women who are shaking their asses, up and down. Excuse my language, but it is what it is. They're shaking their asses with almost no clothes on, up and down. And unfortunately, that does have a subconscious response with younger girls who are not even teenagers yet in terms of identifying who they are, because they are being objectified by what I won't call mature women, but older women, as to who they are and what they're worth. And so their value is only in their bodies and not in their minds.
But you had somebody like back then, Tom, I always thought Felicia Rashad was very sexy.
She was a beautiful woman.
On the Cosby Show, she carried herself extremely well with poise, dignity,
beautiful,
elegance. Angela Bassett. So yeah, women
my favorite actress, Angela Bassett.
But where are they today, though? Where are the crop that's coming up today that can carry themselves in that kind of way without having to shake their ass and show their titties and do everything else to get a part or to get a role in a movie?
Well, again, that gets down to who's controlling, who's in front of the screen, is behind the screen. We never see them. And at the end of the day, we don't control who is in front of most of the screens that we're watching.
Right. That is true.
And the reality of it is, we as a community, compared to our overall percentage of the population spend more time in front of the television and go to
Anybody else?
movies and spend more money per capita than other communities.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I
we're
think,
not
I think we're
prepared.
still about 40% of ticket sales movie theater, and only 13.5% of the population.
Absolutely. But we are not prepared to spend our money politically in our best interests.
And Tom, I still say that Hollywood, despite how much money we give them, um, still will not listen to us and sort of cast the kind of characters and imagery that we want to see that will be helpful to our self-image and the community. Um,
Well, that's because we're not using our political vote, which is our dollars, in our best interest, in my opinion.
you know, so so
Because
so so the self-image, the image of the black woman, is inexplicably tied to the image of the black man and our image total overall as it fits in every place else. But then, like you said, because we don't control anything as far as the media is concerned, we have no control over what gets put out there. And and for our poor people who are just trying to make a living, get a paycheck, make it break into the industry, they have to take whatever roles and parts that are given to them and dished out, but still they don't have much control over that. I mean, you
yeah,
have a few black movie makers, but we don't have enough where we can reverse the trends that others who do not have our best interests at heart. I'm not saying they dislike us, and some of them may not even realize the damage that they're doing. But I'm thinking in today's age, when we talk about this and have conversations about it, there's no way they can't know that that this imagery you're putting out there and glorifying is going to hurt somebody. It's hurting young kids, hurting young women, and that it feeds into the whole narrative that degrades the image of people.
well, at the end of the day, Jim, we can't, well, I guess it's easy to blame someone else for destroying our image. But the question is, when do we become responsible for, when do we become more responsible for the solution? Which means that if we decide to have a blackout, not for a weekend, but for a month, we can start with a weekend and say, you know what? Until you are more responsible with the image that you've created of us, then you know what? We're going to spend our money elsewhere and invest in areas that are more nurturing to our community. It's the same way that we talk about shop black, sell every place. And at the end of the day, until we take responsibility for our future and our community and our outcome, you're not going to get a different result.
You know what, Tom? We should sue the industry. I mean, you have states who got together and sued cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
In Oklahoma, who just successfully sued Big Pharma, Johnson and Johnson, and a few others for the opioid epidemic, which the drug epidemic wasn't really a drug problem until white kids started dying in large numbers from the drug problem. You know, when it
Yeah,
was
I would
black
agree.
dying from it and crack, it wasn't that big of a problem because it was relegated to the black community. Who cared? But now it's affecting large number of white kids. Um, Now suddenly we're getting serious about the war on drugs, and we're even suing drug makers, manufacturers for the drug problem.
I'd agree. Well, again, to your point,
So why can't we could get together, do a class action suit, and sue Hollywood for destroying or aiding the destruction of the black image,
but
which hurts all of our image overall, degrades all of us.
I would agree with you in principle, but in practice, they're writing the checks, and the folks who are writing the checks don't look like us. So the question is, what will we really get out of it?
Maybe a way to bring awareness that you guys are damaging black people and it needs to stop.
The
And you
best
need
thing we can do, Jimmy, is withdraw our dollars and our political
Tom,
votes.
that's not going to happen, man. I mean, that's almost like telling folks to stop eating chicken. And
Well, that's true, Jimmy. But if we can't do
yeah, you'd be
that,
better
if we
off
don't have
asking
enough,
to
if
give
we
them
don't
stop
have enough
chicken.
discipline to withdraw our dollar vote for even one weekend, how are we going to be unified enough to execute a class action lawsuit?
Well, a lawsuit is just a bunch of lawyers who are willing to take the case up and enough people signing and then certifying the lawsuit by enough experts saying that, yeah, the psyche of black people have been damaged. And how do you put a dollar value on that? But when you start talking about, and that's nothing anybody has to do, you can go along with the lawsuit by just signing an affidavit and mailing it back in. But not going to the movie theater, not spending your money, not giving white folks your money, that's a tougher sell. There'll be
Why?
a few that would do it, but I guarantee you Hollywood wouldn't skip a beat. If they were affected, it would just be
Jimmy,
kind of bad for me.
Jimmy, if their revenue and their profits dropped that dramatically, and I'm not talking about a weekend, but let's just say we're going to send you a message. We're going to do this for a weekend, or we're going to do it for a week. And let's say, hypothetically speaking, we were able to do that for 7 days. We contribute a lot of money to the motion picture industry in terms of butts and seats in those theaters.
Yeah.
And if we decided to withdraw that for 1 week, that would send an extremely powerful message. And the question is, okay, we just sent you a slight message. If you don't think that our money is worth it, let's do this for a month and see how that impacts your numbers.
I'm going to say this, and for example, when Black Panther came out and broke all those records,
Yes.
a ton of money for Hollywood, I was optimistic. I said, this is going to be the turning point where you're going to see other production companies making large black productions. Black actors are going to start getting a lot of roles and making really good money doing this. And there's going to be a lot of work out there. That hasn't materialized.
Correct.
And
And that's
Hollywood
because
is notorious for copycatting and plagiarizing. When someone comes with a theme, if they come out with Magnificent and they make a lot of money, then another studio puts out something magic, something in the woods. I mean, if they do Cinderella here, they'll do, Sleeping Beauty over there. I mean, Hollywood's notorious for copying and plagiarizing what works, especially in today's age when they can't think of anything new other than to go to Marvel to bail them out. You would think after all the money Black Panther made that there'd be black movies lined up to be made and being produced, but it's not the case. Because Black Panther was a really nice movie that black people liked and was somewhat positive.
and it wasn't just black people that liked it, everybody liked it.
But I think that may have been the problem, is that there was no drive-by shootings, there was no drugs, there were no hookers on the street, there were no catchy phrases, there was no New Jack City type atmosphere. So, I don't care how much money we made, that'll probably be the last one that we'll do.
Well, I hope that's not right. You may be correct. I believe I believe there should be a sequel coming out.
They
If
said there were only 3 Black Panthers. They already had like 2 sequels lined up. I don't see them. I hadn't even heard them talk about it.
That's true. Me neither. I would agree. But myself personally, and I can't say I'm disciplined in everything, Jimmy, but on the most part, I can count on my hands the number of movies that I've seen this year, because I've reached a point where, if they don't have someone who looks like you or me as a centerpiece in the film, then I don't really have an interest or a desire to go check that movie out. And at the end of the day, that's why I haven't really seen a lot of movies this year. And it has nothing to do with Black Panther. I was there before Black Panther came out, but it probably reinforced it, if nothing else. And so I see very few films. I watch very few movies because I'm just not prepared to continue with the status quo. And the question is, if we had more people who are prepared to say, you know what, there's a better alternative. Because movies is nothing more than another form of entertainment.
It
And
is.
you can find other things to do to entertain yourself. And so at the end of the day, if we decided to tank Hollywood by withdrawing 80-something% of our contribution to what's seen on the screen because it does not reflect something that is natural and more culturally enriching of our community, then, hey, at the end of the day, we're responsible for what we don't do. We're responsible for not getting the results that we need. And if we're prepared to continue to watch Step and Fetch It, then that's on us. But I've made my personal decision.
And I'm with you, Tom. I feel the same way. I think it's a disgrace that you take Jamie Foxx, for instance, when he was on top of his game, probably the best all around actor in Hollywood. I mean,
He's one of them.
comedy,
He is one of them.
could sing. I mean, could play a multitude of roles. Could fit in. He did a great job playing. Boy, I was going to say Stevie Wonder, but it's not Stevie Wonder. It's
Ray.
Ray Charles. There you go. Thank you.
Ray Charles.
Yeah, played a great Ray Charles, man. And already had. I mean, they didn't have to dub his voice or anything because he could sing. But like I said, that was somebody that could play a multitude of roles, and you don't have very many like that in Hollywood, especially on the men's side. And for him not to have gotten more roles, I mean, he got some, but then it sort of dropped off. Some other great actors, I think, people like Forrest Whitaker, I think is a great actor, and Morgan Freeman, and I mean, there's just a number of really, really good black actors in Hollywood.
I don't know, Jimmy, and I'm pretty sure that there's some folks who would probably say, well, there's just not enough content written, for those types of characters. But they seem to be able to find folks who can write stuff for someone who has, in my opinion, very little creative acting ability, like a Tom Cruise. Yeah. Tom Cruise is the same person in every film he's ever been in, but they seem to be able to find enough roles for him. Nothing personal against Tom Cruise. He's making plenty of money, but Tom Cruise isn't talented.
That is true. Yeah, he's pretty much a single track sort of actor. He's only going to play a certain type of role, and so you're right about that. And yet somehow they keep creating roles and movie parts that only fit his character.
Right.
So I mean, it must be nice. Now, if you want to talk about some privilege, that is Hollywood privilege there.
Absolutely.
When they're writing roles just for you that only you're going to fit. But like I said, there are
someone who has no talent.
He has some talent, Tom. He has a little bit now.
Jimmy, you got more talent than that man has.
He has a little bit, man. He has a smile. But
that's not talent. That is not talent.
He has a little bit of a cuteness for a guy, man. He has a boyish smile, man. So
okay, Jimmy, would you put him in? Can he even hold? Okay, I'm going to bring up another Tom Hanks. Can he even hold Tom Hanks's jockey strap?
No, Tom Hanks is a really good actor.
There we go. Tom Cruise ain't got no talent. Tom Hanks got talent.
Tom Hanks played a more.
I'll bring up another Tom. Tommy Lee Jones. He cannot hold Tommy Lee Jones.
No, Tommy Lee Jones is a good actor.
Tom Cruise don't have no talent. Tommy Lee Jones, he got talent. Tom Hanks, he got talent. Tom Cruise, at one period of time, he was just creating money, but the man ain't got no talent.
But Tom, if it was all about talent, like I said, there are a lot of talented people who don't get their fair share of the roles in Hollywood, and there are a lot of good-looking people that do who are a lot less talented. Sometimes it's really just who you know, and whether you get on the couch with Harvey or not, and play your role and keep quiet.
Yeah, that's true.
But some of our people have a little dignity about themselves and pride, and certainly turn down certain roles because they feel that's beneath them. Those people struggle in Hollywood, even though they're great actors and actresses. So it's almost like you got to be willing to, if they want you to play step and fetch your role, if you're not willing to do it for Hollywood, take one for the team. Man, I mean, they just write you off, and you may never get a role.
Yeah. And then you have folks like you mentioned Halle Berry a little bit earlier today, and she somehow gets an Oscar for something like A Monster's Ball.
A Monster's Ball, yes.
I mean, and I'm not a big Halle Berry fan, but for the films that she's been in, that would be the least of the films that I would have given her an Oscar for. And especially for the image and the characterization of Black women in that film.
Right.
It was a disgrace.
Yes, I heard your girl turned the role down when it was offered her. She read the script.
Angela Bassett. Thank you, Angela Bassett. Thank you, Angela Bassett, for having some integrity.
But once again, Angela is one of those women who has some pride about herself, but she has a certain sex appeal that she don't have to flaunt things, have her ass out and titties out, to sort of show her sex appeal as a woman. I mean, she does it sort of like I said, like a Felicia Rashad, just through their elegance, where
Right.
they carry themselves. And she's a super talented actress.
Yes,
Super
she
talented.
is. She's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just very few who are in that category. I mean, the very few who are in that category. I mean, you
Well,
had years ago.
one can quite hold a candle to these women, Tom.
I mean, you
I
got.
can't
I
see a
mean,
lady that's
back
under
in the day, it was
30
someone like back in the day, it was someone like a Cicely Tyson. You know, who
back
had
in the
that
day,
type.
yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, that was it. Then you have someone like an Angela Bassett. You know, Viola Davis is someone who is extremely talented.
Yes, she is.
I
In
mean,
fact,
there are women out there. The
I
question
just
is,
saw her movie Widow. I forgot about her. She is super talented.
so there are plenty of sisters out there with plenty of talent. The question is that mainstream Hollywood are not going to let too many black men and or black women of that caliber get on the screen because unfortunately it makes their golden children look not so good.
That is true. That is true. Well, those are the dogs barking, and they're not barking because time is almost up. They're barking because I think somebody's coming to my door. But time is up. I mean, we ran long,
Okay.
which is fine because we can make this a double. So, do you have any parting words as we wrap up to our black?
Okay. Uh, you know, thank you everyone who is at least listening to, and we hope that you contribute to the dialogue of what we have. We hope you enjoy as we get back on the radar on some topics that are very provocative, but that are very relevant to what's going on in our communities right now. I want to thank, of course, Jimmy for coming up with this new platform so we can start getting more content out there. I want to thank everyone who are subscribers today, and we are, of course, asking more folks to subscribe to this channel and continue to stay on the radar. And anything you want to hear, bring it out there, and we'll give it a shot.
Yes,
Jimmy, what do
we
you think?
will. So I want
Absolutely.
to thank everyone for watching and supporting us. Please help us out. We need more subscribers. But on top of that, I want to thank and say that tell our black women that we are not your enemy. The black men are not your enemy. We're both in the same boat, trying to row together. So us rowing in different opposite direction, we're not going to get anywhere. On top of that, I mean, I know that historically we have not always been there and been what we should have, but don't give up, black folks, on ourselves. So we can turn this thing around. And Tommy and I are here to talk about the issues that affect us. And hopefully, through our dialogue, maybe we can spark something between a few people to turn things around. All we need is a few success stories. So,
Absolutely.
um, okay. And so I want to thank everyone. And so it's time for us to wrap up. And so everyone out there in YouTube land, and also I guess on Facebook, we post the link there too. Thank you a lot, and we hope to see you next week.
Have a good evening, folks.
Have a good evening, everyone. As we count down to there.